Alright, hey guys, my name's Evan, and today I got a review of the Panasonic Lumix G7. So the G7 is a mirrorless camera made by Panasonic, and when you're looking at it online, they really want you to get the hint that this records 4K, and not only does it record 4K, but it records 4K for under $1,000, 800 to be exact, and that price range for in-body 4K recording is very affordable. This camera is a micro four thirds camera, so there's a crop factor of 2, so keep that in mind when you're getting it. You're not going to get a full frame or even an APS-C sensor. It's going to be a little bit smaller, but the difference between them I think is negligible. People will insist that full frame is better, and of course it'll be better in low light, but this is still pretty darn good. It records 4K video at 30 frames per second and 24 frames per second if you want a more cinema-like feeling to your video. It also has a cine-like camera profile, which just desaturates a lot of the color, so you can do that in post-processing. It also records 1080p at 60 and 30 and 24 frames per second. So the ISO on this camera goes up to 25,600, but I personally found it's usable up to about 6,400. After that, you zoom in 100% and you can see that it does have a little bit of noise and the edges are kind of blurry. It does have this 4K photo mode, which you can switch from the top dial. I don't find a lot of practical uses for it. It already has pretty good burst rate. It's 8 frames per second with continuous autofocus and 6 with single autofocus. I think that's more than enough, but if you really need 30 frames per second continuous burst rate, I can see how that feature would be for you. You can capture some fast motion for sure. This camera does have 49 autofocus points. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me personally, but to other people it can mean a lot. All I know is the autofocusing is really fast, and 90% of the time it focuses right where I want it to. As far as the screens go, we have an electronic viewfinder and a fully articulating 3-inch screen. As far as physical features, there are 2 versions. There's the gray version, which I got, and then there's the black version. The gray version only comes with a 14-42 kit lens, but if you get the black version, you can get the 14-42 or you can get a 14-140 for a few $100s more. So look at this camera, it's pretty nice. It has a vintage-ish feel to it, like an Olympus OM10 or like a Pentax ME. I like it. Now for the actual buttons, on the top we have the shutter button and the aperture dial around that shutter button. We have the recording button to record your 4K video. And we found the first function button. First function button is preset to exposure compensation. And of course, it being a function button, you can really set it to whatever you want. You have the mode dial, so here you're going to be switching between manual, auto, portrait, scenery, stuff like that. You have the shutter speed dial, and you have the on-off button in between the mode dial and the shutter speed dial. And then on the left side we have the drive mode dial, so we get like continuous, single, 4K, time-lapse, etc. And on the front we have the autofocus lock and lever, so that comes in pretty neat. We have the second function button, which is preset to give you the quick menu. The playback button, the display button, which chooses the EVF or live viewfinder if you want. So moving down a little bit, we got the directional pad. So up is ISO, right is white balance, down is function 3, which hasn't been set, and left is autofocus mode, and then right in the middle we have the menu button. And then way at the bottom of the camera we got function 4, which also works as the trash button. So right in the front we have the electronic viewfinder, which has 2,360,000 dots, so that just looks really nice, is essentially what that means. I find myself looking at photos through the viewfinder just because it's a little bit better quality than the actual 3-inch screen. And then of course we do have the 3-inch screen, which is pretty nice as well. So moving on to the left side, it is a little bare, but we do still have the flash pop-up button and the live view button, or the electronic viewfinder button. It toggles between the two, and it also works as a function 5 button. On the left side of the camera, all we have is the microphone input. There's no headphone input. And of course, down at the bottom, we have our standard tripod mount and battery hatch. Now for the practical use. I find myself loving this camera. It works great. You know, you'll get this camera for the 4K video, I would assume so, but the pictures also have pretty nice quality. I think that they're pretty sharp. The 16 megapixels doesn't really affect the camera. You know, you see cameras having 22, or even the new Nikon 5DSR, which has 50 megapixels. I think that is crazy, unless you're really like cropping out on your photos, but for me, anything over 14 megapixels is just kind of inane unless you're taking photos for billboards, you know? So, I don't mind 60 megapixels. I'm not going to be doing a lot of cropping. I like to get the picture that I want when I take the picture, not as opposed to cropping until I find the right picture. Although that is good with the camera, and 16 megapixels definitely is enough to be cropping. So for the pros of the camera, it's small, it's light, it has a pretty good selection of lenses because Olympus, Panasonic, and a few other companies are making them. So that's always nice. Images look good, the 4K video looks absolutely amazing. It's cheap for what it is. It's $800 and you're still getting that nice 4K video. It does have a fully articulating screen, which is pretty nice. A lot of the cameras only have the up and down function, and speaking of functions, it does have lots of function buttons that can be totally set to whatever you like. Now with everything, there's always cons. My first major beef with the camera is that there's a touchscreen, but there's also an electronic viewfinder, and there's essentially a sensor that turns off the touchscreen and turns on the electronic viewfinder when you put your eye up to it. And normally that wouldn't be a problem, but the touchscreen still senses your touches while the electronic viewfinder is on. So sometimes when I'm using the camera, my nose will touch the touchscreen and it will reset my autofocus point, and that is not good. I don't want to be taking a photo and in the middle of me taking the photo, my focus is completely changed. I have to refocus it, because sometimes these photos are only split-second things, and if I'm not able to do that, you know, what's the point? And I haven't found a way yet to disable the function. The only thing I can find is disable the touchscreen entirely, or flip out the screen and put it back when you're planning on using the electronic viewfinder. Another beef that I have is the battery door. Its placing is a little awkward. I'll have to undo it, right, to get to the battery and SD cards. However, if I'm using a quick release plate, I can't do that. And if I'm shooting video for a while and I'll need to add another battery or add another SD card, it's going to be difficult because I'll have to take off the quick release plate, and then I'm going to have to open this and then closing it, put the quick release plate on, then put it back on the tripod. And the whole reason of a quick release plate is to make things easier, but with this battery door placement, it is a little difficult. Like I said, it's not a major problem, it's just a little beef that I have with the camera. Although the light performance on this camera is at best, you know. It is a micro 2/3 sensor, so you are getting a sensor that is essentially half the size of a full frame sensor, so it's not going to be as good as things like the Sony A7. With that being said, it still takes pictures pretty good up to about 6400 ISO. Anywhere past that is kinda garbage. And another drawback of the camera is there is no weather sealing and the body is fully plastic. Granted, you're buying a camera that is $600 less than the GH4, so you're not going to get all of those features. Why would Panasonic do that? Why would they let you buy a GH4 for $800 or a GH4 for $1,400? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I do understand, you know, they want to keep those premium features to a premium camera, but it would just be nice. I'm always really afraid that I'll drop it, or I'm afraid that I'll take it out and it'll start raining, and I always have to think ahead of time when I'm taking it out. So that was my review of the Panasonic Lumix G7. It is a great camera, and for $800 I would definitely recommend it if you're thinking about getting a camera to record 4K or just a first camera. Thank you guys for watching. If you did like the review, please like the video. If you didn't like it, dislike it, tell me why in the comments. I'll try better next time. And if you really liked it and you're feeling so inclined to do so, I would love for you to subscribe. Thank you guys for watching.